poems are from a new book called Love Island, and it's through Goldfish Press, and Kuhn is the editor. He's also a great poet and mentor for myself as well as many other poets, and just so generous with his time and knowledge of poetry. I just can't express how grateful I am. This book is about two islands, actually. Two of the poems are from Lummi Island, which is about 70 miles north of here, close to the Canadian border. And when I first moved to Lummi Island, I was the grand old age of 23 with my first husband and my little boy, whose birthday it is. And I don't know if he'll get to log on tonight. It's pretty late for him, but for them. But he was about a year old when we moved there, and I really needed a job. And there was this weird fishing form back there that was invented by the Lummi Indians in Lego Bay, but it was taken over by white people, and they called it reef netting. And anyone here in this group that lives in the Northwest long enough probably heard of it. It's just basically a very low-key form of fishing. Two boats are set side by side, and they're strung out across, in this case, Lego Bay. The fish are coming through to get to the Fraser River eventually. And so you have a net stretched between these two boats, and you stand in these towers. I don't know if you can see that. They're about 20 feet off the deck of the boat, and the weather's never really great in that bay, and so sometimes they would sway. And I was one of Buffy Lakehoff's crew. We were the only woman crew in Lego Bay, and there was three of us on the boat, and she was amazing. And this is Buffy and me, my 23-year-old self, and that's Buffy with the hat on and me with the bandana. And what that picture is of is our boats had rolled over. It was the last part of the season. The weather was so bad, and we'd gone down to the bay to get on the boat and just basically tie it up and get them ready to roll them back up to the beach. And they were just literally laying on top of each other. So we weren't really very happy. So anyway, this first poem is called Once Upon an Island. We were American refugees, huddled around our wood stoves, drinking wine and smoking pot over cribbage and conversation, too young to think beyond the next day's fishing. Some did not survive the old age we feared. The rest of us are left to remember, setting the boats on buoys, waiting for the tide to lift us all and bring the salmon, those great wily ones, into our leads and nets. Nothing I have done since has been done with such abandon, not even love. I have to set my little stopwatch here so I don't babble on. And this one is called Reef Net Summer for Captain Buffy, the Salmon Slayer. Until you sent the photograph of the two of us standing together on the beach, dressed to kill, in our heavy, natty woolen sweaters, glittering in dry fish scales, I'd forgotten that summer we spent waiting on the flood tide to bring the salmon moving northward toward the Fraser, listening to gulls and herons and the low talk of the men on the outside sets who laughed and hooted like teenagers when we'd pee in an old Maxwell can and throw the contents over the low gunnels. We stood on slapstick welded towers, 20 feet above swaying decks, the metal rungs slick with fish slime and morning mist, stared through glare-free sunglasses into the dark water of the small bay, waiting for sockeyes, chums, silvers, humpies, and the occasional moneyfish kings to make their way up the sidelines and into our empty pockets. We waited patiently, quietly. Women know how to wait, a skill embedded in our DNA for our men at work or at war, for a difficult birth or a slow death. So suddenly they'd appear, glimmering, smooth, torpedo-shaped, and moving fast. No time to say beautiful, but we'd all think it. And from deep in our throats, a blood call, give her hell, high-pitched, wild women's screams, then half-stumbling, drunk on adrenaline, rushed down to the decks below. I remember your speed and timing as you deftly worked the winches and helped us haul in the net heavy with fish. Your gentle strength as you carried the big kings lovingly, like wriggling, defiant 2-year-olds, from the tangle of the net on the deck to the slushy ice water of the hold for the buyer boat with their scale and handfuls of cash at the end of the day. There were orcas close enough to touch more than once on the ride back to the beach, eyeing our uncounted dinner loaded in a small skiff at dusk back to that lonely little island, now lost to tourism and real estate developers. When you helped me gain strength enough to leave a bad marriage and raise a good son, where I learned a dying trade and found my ancient female voice, the one I'd lost a few years earlier when a stranger in the darkness dared me to speak. So I lay silent, the scream caught in my throat. And this one is called A Song in My Heart. I am grateful for this place, surrounded by familiar things. It has softened me, yes, but it has also repaired the broken places. When a wild bird is mending, you must leave it for a time in a dark, safe place, surrounded by silence, until it is possible, if it is possible, to be healed and released again into the sky. Now, when I moved from Lummi Island to Vashon Island, I was single, divorced, and my little boy was just graduated from preschool, and I had just graduated from college and needed a place for us to live that was safe for him while I worked in North Seattle as a fisheries biologist for NOAA. And so Vashon was it. And this poem is, and my husband, I met my husband at NOAA, and he and I both live here with our dog Archie, who will probably start chiming in here in a minute. This poem, Love Island, and the title of the book is kind of a love poem to myself from the island. My beloved, I know how you came here, but each morning I will give you love eternal. Each day I will bring you sunshine and sunset, osprey and eagle. Do you know how much I love you? Come walk in my forest. I will embrace you with branches of sweet scented cedar and offerings of salmonberry in the spring. Counting my blessings. I woke to a book of poems, and the heron, rising from her fir tree roost, felt my heart open and a small, sad bird fly out. This is Ghost Mountain, Mount Rainier. The view from Vashon of that mountain is incredible, by the way. 5 a.m. on the dock. To the southeast, Tahoma, mother of waters, rests on the horizon. Snow-covered clavicle of ice jutting out over the bay. Lights from refineries glow in the distance, rotting glaciers down to stone. Isn't it hard to read when it's so silent? I'm wondering if people just went ahead and unmuted, how loud could it be? What do you think, Leopoldo?
It's totally up to you. You know,
I'd rather we unmuted everybody, because it's almost like I feel like I'm sitting there going, what? That's really bad. I can't hear anything. Anyone who wishes to unmute.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful,
unmute.
Sandra.
We're here.
Yay!
I hope.
Okay. This one is called The Wave of Forever. The cold feels clean, my breath evident. Walking over the rise towards the valley of the firs. If I close my eyes, the cold creeps into my bones, asking for more, but I am not ready to answer. Though somehow with your quiet passing, it does not seem mysterious. We live and we die. The deer carcass beside the road, an old cedar stump. Through the crystalline fields, diminutive marsh wrens rise like a shout, disturbed from their cold retreats by my passing. We are but a small ripple through the great wave of forever.
Whoa.
Yay, I love it.
All right, Sandra,
Love it.
Good.
Thank you, Anne.
keep going.
All right. How to live simply without judgment. This is uneasy advice, but I know a way to practice. Walk into a forest, gaze up at the crowns of tall trees overhead. They breathe in what we pollute and breathe out good air. Look down at the roots holding the earth under your feet. Love a tree, then try the harder stuff.
Nice.
All we can hold. We left early, ahead of the sun, in need of what a sunrise over still water provides. The best kind of medicine for soul and body. All troubles melt, at least for those few moments, into the fading darkness. So much beauty and worry cannot be held in the heart simultaneously. This one is called The Weight of Water. A watermarked sun in a gray silk sky, the field heavy with mist. Every web and reed bent low with its weight. Earth soaked slick, the light turns sepia to silver, etching the edges of anything gold to green. It is morning on an island, and we wander back as the mist rises off the field, releases its hold on time, resets the clock to another day. There's some
Beautiful.
great ponds on Vashon. My favorite is Fisher Pond. This is about Fisher Pond. 1, beetle wings pulsate to the rodent rhythm heartbeat of a vole underground. In the pond center, a heron, bright yellow eye diverted an instant as I passed beneath his reed shadow. A school of minnows slip quickly under the muck. Silken threads overhead catch my coat, tearing loose the delicate symmetry of an orb weaver's work. In a moment, she begins to digest and spin the damaged threads anew. Nothing here is wasted. It is easy to see in this beautiful chaos how we are all connected, wing to heart, leaf to root, predator to prey. But beyond these green borders, we cannot hear, cannot see, cannot feel how one touch of the web changes everything. So much is formed and reformed without our notice. So much we notice is only an illusion. This poem, happy birthday to my son if he's here. I don't know if you and Jill made it tonight. If you didn't, I totally get it. It's late back there, but happy birthday. This poem was written because of a gift he sent me, 2 gifts actually. One was to my husband and one was to me. He is an artist, a musician, an incredible carpenter and writer. And every time I have 2 chapbooks he did the artwork for, and this one really pisses me off because as an artist, every time I go take that thing somewhere and read, they say, oh, that's some of the best art we've ever seen you do. I go, yeah, it's not mine. But anyway, I'm going to show you these things because they're marvelous. These are wooden, he just decided, walked out in the woods one day, found some sticks that looked interesting and made these swords.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And look at the artwork on these butters. This is all hand painted. The whole thing is hand painted.
Love it.
Isn't that gorgeous?
It's beautiful.
Wow.
And they
Beautiful.
work. And they open. It's actually a sword.
Oh, my goodness.
inside the
Whoa,
teeth.
geez.
Okay, I know, it gets better. And the one for I have to get the Stellar's jade feather out of here because it's part of it. And the other one, my husband, is actually also a flute. and you can play it.
No kidding.
Oh, my goodness.
I can't play this. I can't. I am tone deaf, but it's also a flute.
Oh, wow.
Clever.
That's a gift.
It's a little hard.
Okay, so this poem,
That's not just a gift, that's an heirloom.
it
Right.
holds, yeah, forever and ever. This poem is called Form Follows Function, and this is my Stellar's jay feather. They're so hard to find. Look at that blue. I'm a runner, and whenever I see these, I'll practically dive in a ditch to get them.
Yeah.
Form follows function. This flight feather, loosed from the wing of a Stellar's jay, spiraled down in its own flight pattern to land at my feet. Iridescent cobalt blue perfection, shaped to its aerial purpose, grounded but still beautiful. Whatever is useful becomes beautiful in its duty, and loosed or laid down still holds its inner purpose. No one sees a feather that does not think of flight, and no one sees a sword that does not think of blood.
Wow.
And this is, let me get something to drink here. I don't talk this much usually. This is, we have salmon streams here on Vashon, as anybody and everybody knows on Vashon. This is kind of a salmon-y poem.
Salmon on.
Stone, yeah. Stone and bone. I want to become a stone in this meandering river, large enough to hold my place through spring floods, small enough for a returning salmon to consider, nose me gently before struggling a little further upstream, where she will dig into lighter gravel a nest for her bright orange eggs, attracting the blood-colored males already on their way to death, until both, open-mouthed, mixed eggs and seed together. And after she covers each nest, no longer able to resist the relentless downstream current as it carries her spent body gently back over hard-won, rippled river bottom to the last place she rests, stone and bone together, bleached white and worn with weather, water, and time, inanimate, unnoticed, dreaming. One molten, born in a river of fire, cooled to stillness by a river of ice. The other, a silver sea traveler, until its natal desire compels her into sinuous red light.
Beautiful.
Thank you. This one, I love Mary Oliver, and I know she passed away not that long ago. And I wrote this after getting confused and frustrated, realizing she had kind of found her faith later, you know, a Christian faith as I understood it. And so I wrote this about reading her poem, Thirst. Does it matter how she came to faith? But loving her as I do, or loving her words, having never met, her words have pulled at my heart, my shrunken little heart, for years. I think love, the same kind of love that brought me to despair, brought her to despair, and then to her faith. My faith is watered wine without enough punch or fire to make the effort worth the fall. I tried the altar and bowl, then followed her words into the open fields. On the long trail by the dark pond, I followed as a supplicant, after a saint. Perhaps she would be appalled by this, but I know light when it dawns on me. Let's see here. I'm just going to read this series of poems. I go down to the Point Robinson Beach a lot. And I used to be a biologist, so I used to do a beach walk here for many years, and have to go down and visit the intertidal every now and again. Drift one. Walking the beach this morning away from the catastrophe, watching the Caspian terns hunting the drift, I find myself seeking those small treasures, a whelk shell, sea glass, perfect molded crab shell. For a while, the world is calm, and nothing is out of balance. I know this is temporary, but it is also true. And this is Drift 2. This bay is nothing like the sea with crashing waves and violence. It has become tame by geology and time, its waters slowed and muted into narrow throats by ancient glaciers. I hear the seabirds calling one to another, and sometimes the sound of a train on the mainland, rarely waves on shore. Killdeer skitter along the drift, indiscriminate nesting habits require noise and feints to distract predators. The gulls on the sand spit further down the beach, waiting for a careless clam to show its siphon. And this is a little shorty for the last one, and then I'm done. Thank you all so much. 1,000 moons. Moon jellies dance a pulsing polka in time with the tides, round like their namesake, glow phosphorescent, 1,000 moons in the dark water. Thank you.
And the poems that I'm going to read, a lot of water. So my poems are the ones that I'm going to be reading from, mostly are from this little chapbook that I published last year. And it's about swimming, and it's the story. I mean, it's a series of prose poems, and it's the story of a quest for one of Esther Williams's understudies. Now, I don't know if there's anybody in this audience who doesn't know who Esther Williams was. If so, please raise your hand. Esther Williams, just for those who may not know, was a swimming champion and a major motion picture star in Hollywood in the 1950s. And she did a lot of her movies were included at least swimming and water ballet. And so this book is about the quest for one of her understudies and the water ballerinas who were part of her movies, and mostly went uncredited. And the un part of uncredited is where the title of this book comes from. It started out as a journal that I kept when I was in Los Angeles about 5 years ago, I'm going to say, before I moved here. And so I'm just going to read you sort of in sequence some of the poems from the book. I'm going to start with the epigraph, which is from Ovid's Metamorphosis. I don't know, but I thought I sensed a murmur there midstream and far below me. My hair began to drip, and quick as I can tell you, quicker, I had turned into a wave. The opening poem of the establishing shot for the book is a poem called Esther and Willow. This is the pool set halfway between the guest house and the main house, built by Mrs. Godfrey in 1941, the year Esther Williams started at MGM. I swim on the diagonal to make a length a little longer. The water's warm where the LA sun has touched it, cool where it floats in shade. I'm taking my first swim in Mrs. Godfrey's pool. My landlord, Al, says Mrs. Godfrey was one of Esther Williams's understudies. The guest house is white. The sky is blue. The house at the corner of Esther and Willow. Al says this is a coincidence. I don't believe him. Coincidence is a myth. Deirdre. Al doesn't really want the next door neighbor to know he's converted the garage to a guest house, even though next door remains unoccupied right now. He'd prefer not to give me the neighbor's name or contact information. I want to ask the neighbor about Mrs. Godfrey because he knew her when he was a boy. I want to find her. Al says he thinks her name might be something like Deirdre. In the guest house. Skinny white dining table, separating kitchen from living room. Perpendicular to a white couch and glass coffee table facing the TV on a white wicker bureau at the end of a queen-sized, blue-covered, unpillowed bed. like living in Mrs. Godfrey's swimming pool. Same dimensions, blue and white, but dry. I'm watching all of Esther Williams's movies in hopes of spotting Mrs. Godfrey, her unknown face, her untold name. Culver City. If you come to the end of Motor Avenue, where it stops at Sony Pictures, you can see how the building goes on for blocks. Behind it once, the original MGM lots, sound stages, Stage 30, the enormous tank designed for Esther Williams, complete with special effects and underwater dollies. I was on my way to see my friend Jane, 10 minutes from Mrs. Godfrey's house. Jane walked me past the old Hollywood fake antebellum mansion that had been David Selznick's studio, across the street from the Culver Hotel, once owned by John Wayne, where Judy Garland and the Munchkins stayed. The director, Victor Fleming, had only a few short blocks to walk after finishing Gone with the Wind at Selznick Studios to take over The Wizard of Oz at MGM. 1939. Billy Rose's Aquacade opened at the New York World's Fair. Esther Williams turned 18. Jane says her landlady went to high school with Esther Williams. She says people with in-ground pools treat her like dirt because she works at a pool place. When she kept books for the accountant, people treated her with respect. By the sea, by the sea. We went to the beach. My granddaughter said she understood why the waves were quiet, because they worked so hard all night. My grandson said he wanted to go in the deep end. My son-in-law doesn't know who Esther Williams was. This is called Mansion on the Beach. William Randolph Hearst, who figures in this poem, was the model, as you probably know, for Orson Welles' movie Citizen Kane, and his long-term companion was the actress Marion Davies. And LA's done a great thing. LA now owns the property where that mansion once stood, and they've turned it into a public beach house, beach facility, and the guest house is still there, and the pool is still there, and it's a wonderful facility. I'm proud of LA for doing that. Mansion on the beach. All that's left of the mansion on the beach is the beach, the ocean, the guest house, and the pool. When William Randolph Hearst undertook to develop the property for Marion Davies, the water came up very nearly to the guest house door. Now it's half a mile across the sand. How did that happen? Did the ocean somewhere else swallow half a mile of coastline? Some people think the ocean's like a blanket. If one person pulls more of it over to his side of the bed, doesn't the other person, uncovered, lie there, freezing? In Marion Davies' pool. You had just learned to put your head underwater. Kick, 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 come up for breath, push the hair every time away from your goggles. Little pink fish eyes, talking, instructing. The pool was tiled with waves and little fishes, seahorses and gold. I loved you. It was like being able to watch you in the womb. Let's blow bubbles underwater, clap hands underwater, touch the bottom with our toes, touch the bottom with our fingers, swim to the ladder. You stay there, Granty. Let me swim to you, closer, swim to you, farther, swim to you, closer and better and farther, until, little fish, you are that quick, grown and gone. Somersault. I showed you how to do a somersault. I pushed your little body in a circle underwater. I said, this is how it feels to do a somersault, because that's how you learn, by how it feels. The first word Helen Keller ever spoke was water. When I was a girl, my aunt used to like to tell us stories, and she made up a character based on King Arthur's wife, Lady Guinevere, only this woman was called Lady Guinevere. And this is part of her story. Lady Guinevere. how she swam underwater underneath the North Pole in her chain mail bathing suit, once on a dare under the continent until she rose like Venus in a desert oasis, floating with the Bedouin on their shifting seas of sand. She could have gone to the Olympics, of course, like Esther Williams, except for the fact that in Esther's case, the Olympics of 1940 were canceled because of the war. And except in my mother's case, you know, in ancient Greece. Every pool, she said, is a flying carpet, blue and magic in the summer sun. It can take you anywhere. Film like water, flows, flickers. Light is everything, immersed, engulfed. Inside it, you dream weightless, willing dreams. You could be anybody, nobody, credited, but when you wake, you harden into matter, every single frame, your own mortality. This poem is called Rapture of the Deep. Rapture of the Deep is clinically known as nitrogen narcosis. It's a buildup of nitrogen in the blood. And if you're underwater, especially if you're deep, the nitrogen can build up to the point where it changes your consciousness and you are in euphoric and you don't want to come up. You think you can breathe. This is called Rapture of the Deep. Esther Williams almost drowned on the set of $1 Million Mermaid. She laid her pretty head on the pearl of the seashell at the bottom of the tank and went to sleep. Esther, Esther, the director shouted into the underwater speaker. What are you doing? Get your head off that pearl. It's just been painted. She didn't want to. She was smiling, submerged, an unpainted Botticelli Venus on the half shell. Says she, anybody tells you I didn't do my own stunts is a liar. Converted triangle. When I get my landlord's next door neighbor's number from my landlord's wife, when the neighbor says he used to clean Mrs. Godfrey's pool as a kid, when he knows her name but doesn't know where she is, when he says if I find her, he'll surprise her with a Christmas card, when I say sure. When my friend the genealogist discovers her address, that she's alive and living in the California desert, when I call her, when she says yes, she was Esther Williams' understudy, when she says she just looked like her, B cup, 5'8", 134 pounds, brown hair, shape converted triangle, wide shoulders, slim waist, narrow hips. She stood in, she swam in the chorus. She got no billing. She doesn't care. A long time ago, a good life. When she says her name is Dune. I want to read you a few poems from a new manuscript of mine called Blue Suitcase. These are poems that have been written over a period of time, a good long time. But there are a couple of poems that are swimming poems, and then there's a, well, I call it a tennis poem, but I'm not sure exactly. You'll see. This poem is called Blind Man's Bluff. It's called cheating to tag the girl you want to kiss. Your eyes supposedly closed, blind man, underwater, and instead of me. I watched you kissing Susie. Then Susie kissed Stan, and Stan, instead of you, kissed me. We thought we were getting away with something, our parents turning a blind eye to the water, worried only were we safe, would we come back up. We thought we were breaking bigger rules, taking riskier risks, though our bodies spread away from where our lips so nearly touched, like unread Rorschach tests, flat, nearly identical twins, floating secure inside our mother's sparkling womb. This poem once again nods to Ovid, It's called Second Story Window. Also, she could tell from the way he exhaled, the young man at the open second story window was watching her swim. He leaned against the frame, knee bent across the sill, shirtless, smoking. He must have been talking to someone inside, someone who didn't smoke, because from the side of his mouth, he blew the smoke out the window, flicked the butts away with his fingers. So she tried to swim very well, very attractively. She wanted him to fall to her from the window. One day she waved to him with her flippers. She thought she saw him smile. Then he raised a little, the hand holding his cigarette, went inside and shut the blinds. Slowly, her strokes became more awkward. Her skin loosened and turned green. She lost the ability to raise her missing arms. This poem's called How Can You Tell It's a Poem If It Doesn't Rhyme? And what you need to know about the poem is that every line ends with the letter N. And I'll try and indicate that as I read it. And the story is in the poem, so I don't need to explicate it at all. How can you tell it's a poem if it doesn't rhyme? I was watching the US Open tennis matches on TV when I got up, putting my whole weight down on my sleeping left foot. Heard it crack. X-rays revealed a fractured fifth pinky metatarsal bone. My first sports injury. I'm proud of it, but I'm lucky. I've always been lucky. The sports med doctor, no surgery, put me in a big black boot like an astronaut's and said, whatever else you do, don't put your left foot down without the boot, not even, ha ha, on the moon. He did say, I may take the boot off by undoing the Velcro straps when I'm in bed, but I might forget to reboot, especially since I'm a little bit incontinent and have to get up every night at least one time to go to the John. TMI. My cautious husband says I'm indiscreet, which is, as far as he's concerned, just an other form of incontinence. He says, take baby steps. He says, wait until I'm ready before I put my foot down, which makes me want to put my foot down all the way, to misquote Anne Sexton, who was talking about the sun. Impatient, impetuous, ungrateful, mad, i.e. angry, and a little bit insane. It's my life, I tell him. Pelicans, I tell him, are monogamous for breeding, but independent away from the nest, which is, as far as he's concerned, just an other word for indiscreet. A poem may rhyme, I tell him, but only if it wants to. My foot may be broken, but I can walk. Some years ago, I published this book-length narrative prose poem called Degrees of Latitude with 4-Way Books. And it started out as a journal, as did Un, and it tells the story, tells the geography, I call it the geography of a woman's life. It starts at the North Pole and goes through all the degrees of latitude to the South Pole in sections titled Arctic Circle and the intemperate zone and tropics north and so forth. I'm going to read you the middle section called The Equator and dedicating it to all the fathers in the audience and to my father and to my dear friend Ken. What you need to know about this is that the father in this poem is a Mr. Malaprop, and he makes errors when he uses cliches especially, and they're in here, and I hope you'll recognize them when I read them. My father walked me down the spiral staircase. He held my hand. He was nervous as a wreck. He was crying. I was his bride descending the stair. He held my hand, tears like petals in my hair. In the northern hemisphere, water swirls counterclockwise. Called it a flaw in the ointment, a monkey in the wrench. Held me on his lap, named the birds, carried me into the endless ocean. Junket, Oriole, De Rosencavalier. Made us all listen to the train through the living room, stereophonic sound. Taught us good manners. Don't talk with your mouth open. Never hand daddy anything filled with a snake. Punched my mother in the stomach. Cardinal, chickadee. Held my hand, hosted parties for Ike. Never saw a movie he hadn't seen before. Held me up in the waves, tanager, cedar waxwing, pulled panicking a towel around his naked waist. Slammed the bathroom door in my face. White space. But blue tufted couch, blue smoke of his cigarette, indigo bunting. Let me bury my face in his neck, goodbye. Disappeared again, overseas, into Atlas Shrugged, his second wife, into the gin that hints from Heloise, brings wilted lilacs back to life. Signed himself, devotedly, Dad. In the southern hemisphere, water spirals clockwise. Then he sat in his easy chair by the library window. He smelled of red leather, martinis, Chesterfields. I sat across from him on the couch in the middle of Saturday, woods at a distance repeating themselves. This used to be my house. This used to be my dad. There was nothing for us to say to each other. Not one word, not one bird. Woods like an echo. Nothing when I smoked, when I drank, said nothing, but once upon a time had named the birds. Equinox, equator, in medias res. Day divided equally from night. Humankind at the crack of. Here, water falls like grief, straight down. And I always finish with this poem that was written by my daughter when she was 5 years old. Found poem. Next time you yell at me like that, I might run away from home, and that goes for Daddy too. If I run away from home, I'll leave you a note saying where I'll be. Thank you. And thank you.
Okay. But I was looking for something to read and haven't written a lot of poetry in the last couple of weeks, but my harmonica called to me. So I spent a whole 5 minutes writing this, and I just had to say something about how I feel, how we feel, how all of us feel. I'm so happy to be mask free. I'm so happy to be mask free. Tuck it in my pocket until it needs to be. I jumped on a plane and headed to Philly. Let's see my son run willy-nilly. I had to wear a mask on the plane, but that was okay with me, because I was on a plane and I was free. I'm so happy to be mask free. You know we're gonna get through it. You know we're gonna get through it. And I'm so happy to be mask free.
Nice.
Very nice.
Now I gotta write one.
I'd like to start with a poem called Enzo Open Closed. There's a Japanese meditation practice that you take a brush and ink and you over and over again try to find perfection or happiness or centering or whatever in brushing a circle. And that circle can be closed or the circle can be left open. So this is Enzo Open Closed. At another reading, a gentleman poet from India talked about what the COVID lockdown was like in India. And on Vashon Island, we certainly live in this green bubble. And what I found hardest probably was loneliness. Enzo, open, closed. The flush landscape disappears in a push of erasures, leaving only sticks and spaces to reassemble in the slot between gray dawn and sunset's muting of light. Rain freezes mid-drop. My gloved hand pulls the newspaper from its box roadside. My mask prompts hoots from the anonymous cars. Feverfew broken in my fingers, and Scotch broom pods pop in the heat in the unmowed field. Short an outfielder, last game, my turn up to bat. Everyone stealing apples from the orchard. Maggots thread the failing flesh with brown silk. White buckets wait at the fence, and yellow jackets clot the air. Strapped to her gurney, Cassiopeia is a fistful of stars smudged in a hard, long day's night. Smoke aloft obscures the moon. The west is on fire. Our last swim, we stroke through a herd of jellyfish bumping us, slip sliding over and under. Translucent moons, their gonads show thick orange central. For relief, we burn fists of soft rush. Their ash and water make ink. Our brushstroke arches towards itself. Enzos, a circle closed or opening when we lift the brush, relenting. Thank you.
Reading. And Lauren talked about fathers, so this poem is about fathers. All right. Fathers. Mothers in their conceit cry, ours is the travail of delivery. Our nature is lifelong nurture. What do men care? Generations of forefathers are all irrelevant figureheads. Does an infant come forth a full-fledged person? A father's tender loving care, disguised but ever present, patience, effort, time, firmness, lead the faltering steps forward. Ask what the travails of fatherhood are. I will reveal as much as I can. The wounds are private. You shall not see the bleeding of my heart. The vigil before my son's birth was spent in the darkness outside, tremulous yet grasping towards hope. And then afternoon and the birthing cry. I wanted to see him. Oh, how I wanted to see him. I climbed onto a chair and looked. He reached out his little fist and grabbed my heart. I was his to the death. Now he is a man and has children of his own, a son and a daughter. Fortunate indeed are fathers of daughters. I am still my son's father. It's the words we do not speak to one another. It's the I love you, father, yelled in the middle of a storm that frees restraint. It's the caring from breakdown to cure. That's it. Yes.
You asked me about going back to China one of these days and bring my relatives over. I can't, but I'll read a poem called A Mirage. Just as a reference to Du Fu, one of the greatest poets of Chinese history of the Tang Dynasty. A mirage. All day I saw myself in the distance, suspended between the ground and the sky, as the seagull of Du Fu, not knowing if his poems will die down the ages. What does it matter when I have given up in wine? Whose praise do I need now? And I'm too poor to take a wife, as the bridal sedan too is a mirage. Still, it is better than existing in another stream. I have a cold stream nearby where I have set the fish trap. And I'll read another short poem, and this poem has no title. It's called Untitled, of course. Nameless, these white petals, blossoming and falling at the side of this serpentine road. I can make this journey fewer than a half a dozen years more. But the sea of delicate white petals, glitter has a worthless on the cold ground. I, another nature's child, too am willing to let go. Nameless we remain, nameless we go on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Seems to me that water is the subject of the day. For your information, there is a great book by Lydia Yuknovich, The Chronology of Water. And there's swimming and there's a pool in it too. Speaking of water, in my other life, I used to be a lifeguard and made a living on water. And also by fishing from the trawler or on the trawler. And so I will continue with the water as a subject. I have two Basho haiku poems I'd like to read tonight. The frog never jumped. There was never any pond. Still, poet got splashed. Basho's quiet steps along the mountain path, a clap of thunder. Thank you very much.
And so I made this little chapbook, long stitch. This was in the before times. A friend of mine is really the bookmaker, and I don't know that I could do this again. It was arduous. And I thought, there's a lot of pages in here. And now we're in this, the COVID time. And I'm like, this could become my plague chapbook. I was just being really silly and off the wall. But it's not all, dark stuff. It's, so, I mean, and even if it is, big deal. So anyway, I made this little owl. I did this little art picture of an owl in my spare time on some, of all things, this material that you find on the back of your box spring. It's called Luchador, and it's a lot of fun to play with. So I did that, and it's called Who Are You? That's, it's an owl on there, and now it's Who Are You? And of course I had to handwrite in it. So it's handwritten. Anyway, the first poem I'll read you is very short. It's called The Wanderer. One of the four led an attack, loosed the yarn from the skein. Unraveled thus, she fled to the woods to sort her heart from her brain. Pine sap and toadstools welcomed her home. In treetops she spotted birds' nests. It was here she need not think too hard, here where her heart found rest. In the woods, she was untethered, friend of the thing with feathers. So that's that. Then I wrote a short one called Loafing. Time urges us to a hamster life where the wheel turns faster and faster. We tread and we spin and we run out of breath, all for some greener pasture. Monotonous melodrama.
And I first want to read a poem that was given to me by the birch tree in my front yard. This morning, a poem fell out of a tree, providing its own paper. You can't read it, but anyway, then this one is a poem that I wrote in reflection about meeting my family and my stepchildren and my wife, who is right here behind me. You broke my heart wide open to love. You broke my heart wide open so I could see. You broke my heart so I could love. You broke my heart wide open so I could see that I could love all humanity. You broke my heart wide open and you set me free to love freely humanity. You broke my heart wide open and I thank you. My love can expand forever. It's up to me. It's up to you. Love one another. We can save our planet too.
Thank you. Okay, so it's it's a Father's Day next Saturday, so this is about my father. When we were growing up in Maryland, he's from New York City, so he would always be talking about places in Queens and in Brooklyn that he would hang out in. He was from Queens. And we were living south of Baltimore, so this is in Anne Arundel County. So this is called Anne Arundel County Summer. Ridgewood, Flatbush, Canarsie, Jamaica, neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens, my father intones in the humidity of Maryland's summer air that fills our Chevrolet station wagon. My parents and all three children ride over 90-degree asphalt to a beach on the Chesapeake. My father talks about Rockaway while the early afternoon heat haze shines on the blue-green waters. As we wade in, I see tankers from Baltimore pass along the horizons. Forest, Seneca, Myrtle, and Wyckoff, the stops ticking by the windows of the L, clattering through the winter sunsets until he got off and descended to a vault, a fluorescent night rumbling with subways. He would go to see the Newark Rangers play in Madison Square Garden with his friends and recalls those times as we drive home in the warm rose-tinted light. We are headed toward Glen Burnie with beach sand in our shoes, dreaming of a cold soda and a future endless as the day's halcyon sky. It is 1957, and the twilight childhood sky is beginning to turn to cooling August indigo spilling white stars. Thanks.